Hello, everybody. We just got to have a little discussion about the evidences for evolution for my biology class. So, first thing we got to talk about are homologous structures. Now, homologous structures, what they are, is anything that has a similar structure. You can see that these four things, a human arm, cat leg, whale fin, and the bat wing, actually have a similar structure. So they'll have a humerus, radius, ulna, metacarpals, and phalanges. So all of these have that similar structure. So, but they all have different functions for that. So you got to remember homologous structures, they have a similar or same structure with a different function. Now, this is going to show divergent evolution or divergence because of the similar structures between the species. That actually shows that we all have common ancestors with something that has those same traits, and we've all diverged or split off from that path. So that's what divergent evolution is. You're all coming from something in common because all have a common trait, all have a common structure for a trait. Now, the next thing we got to talk about are analogous structures. Now, as you can see, if you look at this, you have a bird's wing and an insect wing. Now, the bird wing has a different structure than the insect wing, but they have the same function. So, this actually shows convergent evolution where they lived in a similar habitat or environment, and so they had similar needs, and so they converged to have the same trait, which is flight. So they both fly and they develop those traits differently, so they don't have the same structure for that trait, but they do have the same trait. That's analogous. It shows convergent evolution because they've converged to have the same trait. That's an evidence for evolution because it shows us that based on the needs of the population, you will get a similar trait because they live in a similar environment. All right. Our next one's vestigial structure. If you look here, you can see that a whale has a pelvis, snakes have a pelvis, and those are vestigial structures. So, what that shows us is that whales and snakes used to have hind limbs. So, it tells us, hey, they have these traits that don't have a function anymore, but they did have ancestral function. So, vestigial structure, anything that has an ancestral function but doesn't have a function anymore. Like in humans, it's wisdom teeth. They actually call these python spurs. These are pythons. And so humans have wisdom teeth, appendix, tailbone, that kind of stuff. Those are all vestigial structures. It's an evidence because, well, they used to have a function, now they don't, but they still have that structure. So it's an evidence for evolution. Now, another one is the embryonic development. If you look, all of these different species, the embryos develop similarly, and they have similar traits like gill slits, tails. Okay, and then as they move up into being a fetus, they start differentiating more. So embryonic development is an evidence because of how similarly we develop as embryos. They develop very similarly. Now, genetics, this shows how closely related we are to these things based on amino acids and DNA and proteins. So, we are more related to, of course, mammals and vertebrates than we are to a prokaryotic cell. So, in one of the videos in this slideshow, it talks about how it shows DNA and it shows how along the DNA, the nucleotides are very similar. So, genes are very similar. And so, we share a lot of the same genes with most organisms on the planet. So, genetics are an example or an evidence for evolution because we all share similar genetics and genes that make us all somewhat related. So we have a common ancestor with mammals, we have a common ancestor with invertebrates, It's just so far distant that it's hard to trace back to that point. So, yeah, those are the evidences for evolution. If you want to watch the videos I showed in class, just ask. I think the slides are on here on Canvas. So just pull up the slides and watch the videos. They're linked in here. So, yeah, those are the evidences for evolution.